I'm easily pleased. For a channel focused on health and fitness, just standing upright might not sound like the most active thing that I could get up to, but it's what I've been doing in here pretty much non-stop for the last month. So as a result, am I fitter, healthier, less prone to injury, more productive as a result? Let's find out. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you follow the channel, you'll know that I recently had a bit of a sort out in here. It's where I film some of these videos, it's where I edit all of them and basically do anything that I need to be sat in front of my computer screen for. So I'm sat in here a lot, many hours a day. And so I wondered, should I set this up so I don't spend so much time sitting down? Is it really as bad for you as they say? So I read lots of studies on standing at your desk and the benefits of doing so. I also watched lots of videos on the same subject. And after boring myself stupid, I remain unconvinced. For example, this from the NHS own website on the benefits of sitting less. Studies have linked being inactive with being overweight and obese, diabetes, some types of cancer and early death. Now I'm all for a late death, but I'm not sure that when I consider how active I am, I want to rely on just standing up as something that makes much of a difference. They also say things like, it is thought excessive sitting slows metabolism, but they then go on to say there's not enough evidence to set a time limit on how much you should sit. They even try to convince you with the fact that 1970s astronauts in zero gravity suffered bone and muscle loss.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Is that a comparable example? I have to be honest, if somebody invented a zero gravity chair, I'm buying that bad boy and just popping an extra calcium tablet. So there are a lot of studies where you can't really tell causation and correlation. They say things like people that sit all day and never move around are often fat. I'm sure that's true, but I think that might be more closely related to their fridge than their desk. And I've read a lot about potential changes that occur by using a standing desk, but with outcomes that are borderline meaningless, at least for me. For example, knowing that standing up like this burns more calories than sitting down is, for me, it's up there with knowing that the stairs rather than the elevator will burn more calories. I'm sure it's true, in fact it sounds obvious. But if my calorie deficit or surplus has been impacted in a noticeable way by standing up or taking the stairs, and not my exercise, my diet, something's gone wrong. I do appreciate if you're somebody completely inactive, then anything you do to tweak your base metabolic rate by bumping up the calorie burn during your working day is a good thing. Although still probably easily undermined by the sandwich you eat at your desk, whatever height it's at. And then studies have a habit of taking one little bit of data and projecting it forwards to dramatic effect. So 50 calories a day burnt by standing becomes 3,000 over a couple of months, getting on for a pound of fat, 6 pounds of fat over a year, 12 pounds over 2. All simple maths, and if you take 1 million average people, by which I mean 1 million fat people, and they all immediately drop 12 pounds in weight, you would have less of them going on to develop type 2 diabetes, heart attacks, stroke, etc. So all very positive. But the reality is that those daily incremental changes are so minute that they could be derailed by any number of random life events. So I was unconvinced by the generic cardiovascular and calorie burning benefits, but the potential for solving or at least alleviating back problems did seem to make much more sense. In fact, I didn't even need to read many studies on that to think there might be something in this. Now, because I'm tall, I've always tried to focus on sitting at my desk with good form, but because I'm a normal human, I end up slouching anyway. So I'm regularly finding myself sat for ages with rounded shoulders, a rounded back, pressure on my lower back, shortened hip flexors. I've also suffered with mild lower back pain because of it. I have the occasional twinge in my back that can take a couple of days to calm down. As a result, I spend quite a lot of time doing stretching and mobility work in the gym because when I go there, especially after a morning in the office, I do feel like I need to sort of unravel my body from the sitting position it's been in. I should also add, I have tried every type of chair imaginable. Regular ones you kneel on, ones your co-workers launch from a 5th story window to see how high it bounces, ones where you need to hide the receipt from your wife. None of them made a difference. So just as I'm contemplating how a standing desk might help with my posture in here, and it'd just be cool to have as well, the guys at sitstand.com said, do you fancy trying one of ours? I said I do, but I read the specs and it was only recommended for being suitable up to 6'1". I said, I'm 6'6", that's not going to work. They said, no problem, you need the Yo-Yo Desk Pro 2 Plus extra height model, suitable up to 6'8". You know, it's just occurred to me that it's probably called the yo-yo desk because it goes up and down. That's genius. Anyway, I said, cool, send me the man-sized desk, and here it is. And for complete clarity, although they sent me the desk, they have zero control over what I say, so if the thing is pants, I'll tell you. But it's not. In fact, I've been surprised by quite how beneficial it's been, and what those benefits have been. Now in the past, I've had standing desk units that sat on top of a regular desk, and basically you pull a little lever at the side and a platform sort of moves up and down with your screen and your keyboard on it. And for the first couple of days, I would move it up and down and stand up accordingly. And then I'd get bored and stop using it. It just wasn't super practical. The only thing that went up and down was your keyboard and your monitor, so anything else on the desk stayed where it was. They were big and ugly, and basically you had to physically lift it up and down. But this has literally changed how I work in here, and the impact on my productivity has been huge. In fact, I like it so much, it's gone onto my website on the things I use for my health and fitness section as a recommended product. And talking of my website, in a transitional move as smooth as the dual sub 45 decibel motors in this thing, let me just take a moment to tell you about my site and this video's sponsor that I use to create it. So Squarespace are this channel's main sponsor, and with good reason, because aside from their support allowing the channel to keep going, their product is very, very good. For an example of what somebody with pretty much no idea what they are doing can do with a Squarespace website, just go check out my page. It covers loads of the questions that I get asked all the time about the equipment I'm using, the events, the races that I'm going into. And because it is so easy to edit and update, we are constantly adding new stuff there. For example, the ski erg that I just bought for the garage is now on the site, so is the desk. So very happy to recommend them. If you are interested in getting your own site, simply go to Squarespace, pick yourself a template, you edit it to look the way you want it to and make it as fancy as you want. And I should add, like much of the stuff that I use, I've only scratched the surface of what it can actually do, so don't use my site as a guide to the limits of what is possible with them. There is plenty more I could have done and probably will get round to doing at some point in the future, including stuff like setting up and then maintaining my own blog. Also, they do things like if you've got e-commerce requirements, they can handle all that for you and even deal with any of your more general domain needs. So if you need a website for your business or even just for fun to share stuff with friends and family, go to squarespace.com. They will give you a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your own site, use the code MarkLewis for 10% off. So, big thanks to Squarespace for the support, and back to the desk. Right, before I talk about the boring specs stuff, let me explain how I use this and the effect it's had on my productivity, if nothing else. So, I don't stand all day long. In fact, there's actually plenty of evidence that says that being stood up for long periods is just as bad for you as sitting down. So I alternate between standing and sitting. I probably spend about 80% of my time stood up. But what standing also allows me to do is just walk around, and that actual active movement is something that feels a much more natural state to be in than just statically sitting or standing. And this is where making good habits easy comes in. I've spoken about this before in relation to all sorts of things. If there is something that you think will be good for you to do on a regular basis, do not rely on yourself just thinking it's good to do. Make it almost impossible to not do, or at least be reminded to do it. Because you could think, and you'd be right, that being sat down is not a barrier to walking around for a break. You just need to get up and do some movement. But nobody does, or at least I don't. But when I'm stood at the desk like this, to move away from it and wander around is just quite natural, because I'm here, I'm ready to go. If I'm working on a script, I just want to run through some lines in my head, or I'm on the speakerphone to somebody, I can just leave the desk and move around the office. I can go outside, come back in, get straight back on with it. So even though I might stand at the desk for an hour, maybe 2 hours before sitting down for 10 or 15 minutes, it's not an hour stood in the same place. I'm wandering all over the place. I might go to the other side of the office, I might go and talk to Jen, look out the window, play with the dogs. So that's my random working day. I'm sort of moving around all day long, occasional bit of sitting. But what I absolutely make sure to do is to be in a standing position, if I'm not already there, when I'm winding up in the evening or coming to the desk in the morning, because here is what's been literally transformative over the last month. When I'm stood up, I am way more likely to not find myself wasting time. Two perfect examples of this are previously when I'd come into the office in the morning with my cup of coffee, I'd stick it down, and I'd just start reading the news or scrolling through Facebook, and before I know it, 30, 40 minutes has gone past, and I've not actually started doing anything constructive at all. The same would happen in the evening. I would finish, whatever it was I was working on, and I'd go and check on Instagram or something, or YouTube, and again, before I know it, an hour has just flown by, wasted. But when I'm stood up, I just have a much more crack on with it attitude. In the evenings especially, I'll finish the task I'm doing, shut it down, and go. There just doesn't seem to be the same sort of subconscious desire to get sucked into wasting time like there is when you're slumped down, semi-conscious in front of the screen. So productivity, or at least the percentage of time spent at my desk being productive, is through the roof, which is oddly something I hadn't even considered as a possible benefit, yet has ended up being for me the best thing about this setup. That said, the other thing that has been very evident is I simply feel less stiff and scrunched up. When I go to the gym and I do a little bit of mobility work before I start whatever my training is for that day, my hip flexors, my lower back, they just feel normal. Whereas if I'm training after a morning of being sat down, I would really feel that mobility session was needed and crucial to have done, because I just felt like I had limited range of motion otherwise, especially when I'm doing something like deadlifts or bent over rows, anything that's putting pressure on my lower back. I want to feel good and stable in my midsection, my back, my core, and simply standing up straight like this for a couple of hours before hitting those exercises just leaves me feeling way better and ready for them than 2 hours spent sat down and then having to spend 10 or 15 minutes doing mobility to fix it. So I absolutely love it. In fact, I like it so much, and Jenna likes it so much, that we're going to be buying one for her side of the office in the next week or so. We occasionally have to switch desks for various reasons, and when I go to her side, have to sit down, it feels like a step backwards. Likewise, when she comes over here, she says, "Oh, I wish I had one of these." So let me just wrap up with some specs. This is the Yo-Yo Desk Pro 2 Plus Extra Height. Starts at just under £750, but you can add bits and pieces to upgrade it. So basically when you buy it, you pick the colour of the frame that goes underneath, and then the size and the colour of the desk top. This is a sort of oak looking thing, which actually is quite cool. I've always had plain black desks in the past, so it was a nice change. And then you can add various bits and pieces like cable management holes, a cable management tray that I've got underneath the thing to hold all the wires. And then you pick if you want them to build it on site for you or not. I built my own because I'm a man born in the 1970s, and that's what we do. It apparently has a maximum load capacity of 100 kilos, which means theoretically I should be able to sit on here and still operate it, and a range of heights from the frame being 62 centimeters off the floor to 127 centimeters off the floor. Let me demonstrate what that looks like, because it's hard to imagine. Basically, at the bottom, it goes as low as a desk that is too low even for 5'6" Jenna to sit at. I'm not sure how short somebody would have to be for that to be the right height to sit at, but it's pretty short. More interestingly and beneficial to me is at the top. I thought 6'6", I'm going to be almost maxing this thing out. Absolutely not the case. So this is how high I have it set. Absolutely perfect for me here. But if I wanted it higher, it goes up here. They say 6'8". I would have to be, up on tiptoes. It's still too high. Shack level deskage. It goes very high. And the best thing about it is the memory function on the dual motor system. As I said earlier, make good habits easy to implement. So I've got this set up so that button 1 sets the desk for me, sat down. That also works for Jen. It's just a standard desk height. Button 2 is for me standing. Button 3 for Jen standing. You can push and hold the up and down button to adjust it. But if I come in here in the morning and the desk is down, which it shouldn't be because I should have finished the night before with it in the up position, but if it's down, I just tap the button, I sip my coffee, and by the time I go to put my coffee cup down, it's at the right height and I crack on. If I had to manually push and hold buttons to move it up and down, I'd be less inclined to do so. If you're thinking, wow, how lazy are you in the mornings? Very, very lazy. Okay, that is it. A desk might not be the most exciting piece of health and fitness equipment, but when you're using the thing for hours and hours a day, its benefits stack up. I like it a lot. Oh, and if you're wondering how high a ball that you sit on bounces when thrown from a 5th story window, it goes into orbit.